Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of creating a calculator in WPF. If you haven't watched the part 1, I recommend that you do that, and if you haven't subscribed, I also recommend that you do that. It helps out the channel, and like the video. I guess that's enough of the plug. So in the first episode, we did a little bit of the scaffolding, and let me bring up Visual Studio, and let me load up the project again. There we go, calculator. Okay, so let me zoom in. I noticed in my last video I didn't zoom in very well. There we go. That looks a little better. Hopefully you guys agree. But in the last video we talked about the scaffolding, and that's basically what we made. We made a grid in WPF, and with the grid we made different rows and columns. And then the top row here is going to be the output, and then the rest of the rows and columns is just going to be buttons. And that's what we're going to do in this episode. We're going to add the different buttons and make some kind of event in the code behind. So we're actually going to go in the code behind here, write some C# to retrieve what button that we pressed, right? Because we're going to have all these different buttons. We're going to have 0 through 9. We need to know which one the user presses. So we're going to be in the grid still because we're adding to the grid, and let's just go ahead and create the first one. And once we get the first one made, it'll be pretty easy to create the rest because it'll be basically like a copy and paste, but we'll just change a few things. So anyway, I'm going to make a button, and I'm going to make it a single tag. It's not going to be the open and closed. And the first thing I want to do is I want to give it a name, and you can see that already came up. And if you're wondering what the difference between the X name and name variable or property is, so if I just do name, there's both, but I really truly don't know. The full difference from what I read online is that not every component has the name attribute, so all of them do have the X name, and I think it's based on the namespace. I don't know. I could be wrong, but anyway, it works. So we're going to give it X name, and this is where we give the button, or really any component, a name. And let's just make this the what? Let's bring up the calculator so we have something to compare it to. But let's just make it the 0. Or maybe we'll start at 7 and then we'll go through and add them. Okay, so let's make it the 7 button. And I'm just going to name it 7 BTN for button. Okay, and then content is what you want the button to say, and we just want it to read out 7, as you can see here. And then something else we want to add is we want to tell it what row and what column do we want this button to be in. So if we look at the calculator again, it's going to be right here if we base it on how these look. So it's going to be the first row, because this is row 0, so this will be row 1, and then this will be column 0. So if we do grid.row, that one's 1, so you can see it moved down 1. And by default, it goes to the first one. But I'm just going to explicitly put 0 for column as well. Now I hit Control Save, and you can see how that extension that I have, that formats it for me, how useful that is, because it puts it all out, and it makes it nice and easy to read like this. And then something we can do, we can change like the font size. I think that's a little small, so I'm going to make it 20. And this is where we just kind of play around with numbers. And you can change it however you think's best. I think 25 in this instance looks good. And then I think there's a font weight. Yeah, bold. And that makes it a little bolder. Let's go ahead and run this. And we'll start it up. I don't think I've ran it with you guys yet. So yeah, you just hit the run up here. And now we just have a button. But as you can tell, nothing happens when we press on it, right? And that's where the code behind is going to come in. We need some kind of event that if a user clicks on it, this is going to happen. In order to get the event, I think there's a way. You can see all of the different down here somewhere. Yeah, okay, so it's right here. You might see this, you might not. This is the properties of the button. If you see this lightning bolt, you can see all of the different event handlers for this button. So once the button's loaded, you can give it an event handler. Or once the mouse, I don't know, mouse cursor is over it. I know there's one like that. Mouse center, yeah. Stuff like that. But the one we care about, and I'm just going to use this. I'm not going to use it through the properties. I don't code that way. I'm just going to right-click event. And right here you can see that it gives us a new event handler. What that'll do is it'll take the name of the button, the name that we gave it. So we'll double click it, and it'll do _click for what kind of event it is. And now if we look in the code behind, so we'll go to mainwindow.xaml.cs, and if you don't see it up here, you'll have to get to it by expanding the mainwindow.xaml and double clicking that. And you can see there's this new 7-button click event. It made it for us because we double clicked the add new event handler. However, I'm just going to make one single event for each one of these buttons, and then it'll determine what button that we pressed from there. So instead of 7-button, I'm just going to call this num button. Okay? And then what we can do is we can grab the name of the sender. And we know the sender is a button. So what we're going to do is we're going to, I think the syntax, we'll figure this out, is button in parentheses, maybe. And then sender. So we're casting the sender to type button. And I think this all has to be in its own parentheses. And then dot name. That's how we get the name of the button that we clicked that runs this event handler. So it's going to turn the sender into a button, and it's going to grab that name, because that's what the sender is for every single instance that uses this click event. Hopefully that makes sense. But if not, you'll see what I mean. So let's make string name, and it's going to equal that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do messagebox.show. And you'll see what this does here in a second, but it just brings up a little box onto the screen, and it prints out whatever's passed into this method here, this show method. And for instance, we're just going to print out the name that we got from the button. So let's go ahead and start it again. And let's press 7. And it did not work. It says, oh, we didn't change. Yeah, okay. We have an error down here, and I didn't keep it on the screen long enough. But we forgot to change the event handler name. Because 7-button click is no longer an event handler in the code behind now, right? Because we changed it to num button. So now once we change it, we can save that and then hit start. And this time it should work, hopefully. Cool. Here's that message box. This is all it is. It's just a little pop-up, its own little pop-up window. And it prints out whatever you pass into that method. And in this case, it's the name of the button. So it's 7-button. So it works. It's great. And my idea, and why we're doing this, is we're going to have a little switch statement in here. It's going to say, okay, if you press the 6, do this. If you press the 5, do this. If you press so on and so forth, right? So let's bring the calculator back. We need to say, okay, well, we need 8, 9 on the rest of this row, and then we're going to leave this column blank. And then 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and then 0 right here. So I'm going to do a few with you guys, and then if you're following along, you can go ahead and just do the rest. But I'm going to copy this button, and I am going to paste it. And you can see one of the things that it's mad about is it can't have the name that's already a name of another component. And that's fine because this one's going to be 8. So I'm going to name it 8 button. And then the content I'm going to change to 8. Okay? And then the next thing we need to change is the column, because it's not going to share the same column as the 7. It's actually going to be 1 over. And it starts at 0, so 0, 1. And those are everything that we need to change for this one. I actually have the 7-button copy, so let me paste 9. So 9-button. This one's row is the same. The column is now going to be what? It's going to be 2. 9 button, that's fine. And then this one's going to say 9, like that. Now notice, let me go ahead and run this. If you remember when we hit 7, it said 7 button, but when we hit 8, it now brings the name of that button. And then 9, 9 button. So you can see how that's useful. We don't have to make event handlers for each one of these buttons. We just use this one shared event handler. We'll grab the name of whatever sent it, whatever sent the event, and we'll grab its name and we'll do something based on that name. At least that's my thought process. So here I'm going to start with what? 4. So we'll change this to 4. And it's going to be 4 button. And the row this time is actually going to be 2 because we're down a row. The rows go down this way. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then column is going to stay 0. That looks good. All right, so I'm going to continue, and I'm going to do all of the buttons. I'm not going to waste a lot of your time going through each individual one because I still have 6 more to go. So I will see you guys once I get all these thrown in here. Okay, I think I have everything set up now. So the only thing that you need to make sure that you change correctly is the name, the grid.row, the grid.column, and the content, because we want the content to match what button it is. So let me just do a little test. Let me start this up again. And just make sure as I press a few of them, they have the right name come up. 0 button. This one should be 3 button. 4 button. 6 button. Okay. That is perfect. So you can kind of see how it's starting to shape up as a calculator. We're starting to see the user interface take shape. And if you wanted to, you could change the color of these buttons. Maybe we will. Maybe we will in the future. We won't keep them this gray. Or maybe we'll add an option for the users to change the color of the buttons. Who knows? That could be definitely something to do in the future. But I just want to get the basic functionality done first. And then if we ever want to add stuff in the future, or you want to add stuff in the future, of course, you can. But anyway, I think that's all I'm going to do for this video. In the next one, we will work in the code behind. We'll do a switch statement, and you can learn about those if you don't know about them already. And then we can start printing them out onto the screen here as we click the button. So if I click 9, 9 will appear. If I click 6, it'll say 9, 6. And then so on and so forth. So hopefully you guys enjoy this series. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.